Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. This is Lau with Qiancong Crafts, and happy Pride Month to everybody. Today I am going to be swatching almost all of the Lennon Tool Bar inks that I could get my hands on. I did get a lot of these from Yoseka, as you can see over here, and I also bought all of these inks bottles from Atlas Stationers, and boy, they are so beautiful. I am going to be swatching my rainbow of Lennon Tool Bar inks for you guys, and hopefully you will be able to have a feel for what the colors look like, so that when you do go make your purchase either at Atlas or Yoseka, because I think those are the two that I know who carry Lennon Tool Bar. Stilo and Stile also carries Lennon Tool Bar inks too. For today, I have my everyday Galen leather notebook. This is 52 GSM Tomoe River paper. I have made stamps using Tori and Carol's stamp. I will also put that down in the description box, as well as Yoseka Stationery's little brown fox jumps over the lazy dog stamp. I just stamped it onto the corner here and labeled LTB for Lennon Tool Bar. All right, and so I'll be swatching with you, and then at the end I will look at all the inks that I swatched and compare them with how they look on two different papers that I have. I have Rhodia paper and beautiful paper. I do not have Midori paper or Nemesine paper. Apologies for those who do use those, but I have three papers that should cover most of the papers that people typically use. Without further ado, grab yourself a lovely cup of tea, coffee, and do some journaling as you join me along in swatching all 38 of the inks that I have. Alright, so this is going to be a long video, so if you only want to see all the colors together and compared with the different papers, I will have them down in the description box for you. Alright, let's get started. Okay, so the first ink today is Sherry. Now this is a really beautiful, like pinky orange color. Yeah, it is very orange in this paper. Okay, so this is Sherry. All right. Because I have a lot of inks, I decided to do the swatches on these tiny little bottles. So hopefully that should be sufficient enough to see the colors and how they shade a little bit, as well as just seeing a little bit of the writing sample there to see how the color looks. Now I do want to have a fair warning disclaimer that swatches don't show 100% how the color will look out of your fountain pens. Typically, these swatches are going to be going to show all the colors, potential colors that you'll get coming out of your pens. But I have noticed that coming out of my fountain pens, the colors tend to be just slightly lighter than the swatches because it's coming out of a kakimori nib, which lets out a lot of ink at a time. All right, the second ink is Lennon Tool Bar Red Beans. This is a gorgeous, gorgeous muted red with a little bit of brown undertone to it. I absolutely love this color. Okay, so there's red beans. And red beans is typically it's used in a lot of Asian sweets and desserts by heating it up and mushing the red beans into this lovely paste. And it's just so delicious in lots of, Taiwanese and Japanese desserts. I'm sure other Asian cultures use red beans as well, but you can see here the color is just absolutely gorgeous. It has a lot of vibrant red in it, and it's also more on the darker tone of a red. So if you like colors like Dominant Industry Romania Red, Sailor Shikori Yodaki. This red beans will be kind of in that same area. Not as red as those two, but you know, it's definitely muted, and I love that color tone. Okay, next color is Joey. So Joey is another red color, and I read up that Joey was inspired by 4 love stories. You can read up on the stories behind each one of these inks at Lennon Tool Bar or Yoseka. They show the a little blurb of the inspiration behind the ink, you know, the naming of these inks. So Joey is apparently sister to one of the other inks, Sherry, and there seems to be an interesting like love story between the 4 inks that were named in this love story. I absolutely love the color Joey too. Joey is a little bit brighter than red beans, but they're in like the same color tone. So if you like something brighter and redder, kind of like a rosy color, Joey will be that for you. Red beans is slightly muted. The next ink is Sun Moon Lake Ruby Tea. I think it's a Ruby Black Tea, but it's just shortened here as Ruby Tea. I remember watching a Yoseka stationery video where Daisy talked about her favorite ink or go-to ink, and she said this ink, Sun Moon Lake Ruby Tea, is her favorite. And so I got a bigger sample of this one because I felt like I would love it too. And upon swatching, I do see that I love it. It is like a terracotta color. When it's wet, it is a little bit warmer, but when it dries, it is a little cooler. So that's one thing about Lennon Tool Bar inks. Let's see, Sun Moon Lake Ruby Tea. So that's one thing about Lennon Tool Bar inks is that they, well, most of them go down warm and they dry really cool. So instead of, they don't retain their warmth. So I personally am a person that likes an ink that dries down warm, or is like on the warmer side, where it's a little bit brighter rather than very unsaturated and cool. Next up, we have Wolfberry, which is the very first ink that I chose because it is just such a lovely terracotta red, in my opinion, and I love that kind of color because I have Red Fox. Red Fox does dry down to be a little cool too, and I think Wolfberry does a similar thing, but it is a very warm color to begin with. Just look at that. It's so lovely and orangey and with some red in there. I love it. Okay, so that's Wolfberry. And these bottles of Lennon Tool Bar inks are 30 milliliters. I believe some of them are like 35. There's some special edition ones that come in a very different bottle, like Sun Moon Lake Ruby Tea. That one comes in a different shape than this bottle, and I believe it might be 35 milliliters, but you get 30 milliliters for about 20 bucks at Atlas Stationers. With my code, you get 10% off, so that's about 18. All right, so the next ink here is Bombax Ceiba. This is a really, really very orange ink, and it seems to be very bright. Yeah, it's a very, very wet red orange ink. This ink does not seem to shade a lot because it just goes down super wet. So, and one thing about all of Lennon Tool Bar's inks are that they're very, very well flowing. Most of them are extremely wet. So this is Bombax Ceiba. But as you can just see here, it's just so wet that I'm getting really thick, broad lines compared to the previous inks that I just swatched up there. So Bombax Ceiba is definitely very, very wet, and you will get broader lines out of your nibs because of this wet property. That is a red orange with no brown undertone to it. The rest of these had some browns to it. So if you like an orange that is just bright and pop out, this will be probably similar to Pilot Iroshizuku Fuyugaki. Next up is Bitter Orange Tea. This is one of my favorite oranges in the bunch. It's got some browns and yellow undertones to it. And it also dries down a little bit unsaturated and cool, but going down it is a warm orange. And it does have some good shading to it. And this one, among the rest that I have swatched so far, does run a little bit drier, but it's still pretty good flowing. So this is Bitter Orange Tea. And I can tell that it's a little bit drier than the rest, as you can see, is because the letters are slightly thinner. There's a lot more shading going on here, and the ink doesn't readily just leave the nib onto the paper as the rest of these did. So this one is going to run you a little bit drier. But I'm using it right now in one of my, well, in my only Aurora pen, and it's coming out of that pen just fine. Very, very nice flow. Okay. The next ink is Sunset Glow. Now this is the first of multiple atmospheric inks that I have. The atmospheric line in Lennon Tool Bar's inks is named after, like, you know, atmospheric phenomena, like, you know, the sunset. And these are waterproof inks, so they are pigmented, and therefore if you decide to get their pigmented inks, you're going to have to clean them out of your pen more often. As with most pigmented inks, the maintenance for that is just a little higher. But they're very wet. And this is a yellowish orange ink, so it is light but very legible and bright at the same time. Okay. And one thing about this ink, though, is that it might go down pretty wet, but it dries really pale. And it's kind of almost like an orange creamsicle color, like a pale orange creamsicle. So like a milky orange. Sunset Glow. You'll see a brighter orange as a halo as it starts to dry, but it goes down this bright orange and then it cools off to show more yellow as it dries. It's a really interesting ink. It doesn't retain its nice bright orange color as it dries, so that's just something to be aware of, but it's a gorgeous color. And again, like I said, it is pigmented, so you can see in the bottle, like it's not a clear. Usually orange and yellow inks are like transparent and clear. This one is not. You can see it's just like cloudy in there. So that's atmospheric inks for you. This last one is, the last one on this side is Good Spirits. Good Spirits is another yellowy orange ink, or actually it's an orangey yellow. So when I say orangey yellow, it is a yellow base with some orange undertones. And so, yeah, I think this one is a lot more yellow than Sunset Glow. So this is called Good Spirits. I think it's a really, really beautiful, legible yellow because it's got quite a bit of orange in there. Perfect for summer. It's a good spring color too. Good Spirits. And a lot of Lennon Tool Bar inks are named after something that brings a lot of happiness, which, like, I think that's another reason why I love Lennon Tool Bar ink so much, is that, you know, aside from their tea, they name it after a lot of things that are found in Taiwanese culture, and Japanese culture too, because a lot of these names are Japanese. Some of these ink names are in Japanese. So that is Good Spirits. It is that lovely, bright, orangey yellow, and I love that so much. So if you like a pop of bright color, bright yellow, this one would be a great one to go for. Next up is the last yellow ink that I have. It is Golden Trumpet Tree. This one, let's see. Yeah, this one is the true yellow of the rest of these orangey yellows down here. It does have some orange in it as well. You kind of have to have orange in a yellow, otherwise it's so pale and unreadable. Not too much shading on this one, as it is kind of a, you know, it's a wet ink for how light it is. Golden Trumpet Tree. There you have it. It is just so light compared to Good Spirits. They're almost the same, but once they dry down, you'll see a little bit of the difference. All right, next up is a favorite among people, I think, is Lennon Tool Bar Aunt Tiger. So this one has a Taiwanese name, but in English it is translated to Aunt Tiger. Or I believe it's a Mandarin name. Okay, Aunt Tiger is kind of like a tannish color with orange undertones. So I don't know if it's a brown or an orange with the other as an undertone, but it is here closer to the oranges, because I do see a lot of, you know, like it's visibly orange. So with some tan in it and like a little bit of brown. All right, so it's good. Oh no, this one is Aunt Tiger. Yeah, that's a really pretty color. Put this in a wet, juicy broad, then you are gonna get such gorgeous saturated color out of this ink. It does shade quite well, so in a finer tip, you are gonna get the lighter tones of this ink. Yeah, I really like Aunt Tiger. I think I'm gonna put that in a pen one of these days. All right, next up is, again, also another favorite, I believe, Sesame Oil. Now this ink, the color shown on this swatch here is actually really saturated compared to how it comes out of a pen. So you'll need to get a broader nib to see this gorgeous deep brown. But sesame oil is supposed to look like the sesame oil, which is slightly like a tannish color with a little bit of like honey undertone to it. And as with the rest of these Lennon Tool Bar inks, sesame oil is just as wet, flowing. Sesame oil. All right, so it's going down on this as a really dark brown, and then it dries to a much lighter brown, or like a cooler brown, I should say. And I tried sesame oil, and I think in one of my pens, I didn't really like the end result of when it dries. So I'll have to try it out with another pen, maybe a broader tip, because I do love this brown color. It is really nice how it is right now because it's wet. Once it dries, it's not going to be this like same color that I like. All right, next up is Muzha Tieguanyin Tea. This is part of the tea line along with Sun Moon Lake Ruby Tea. So this one is where we start going into the browny greens. So swampy and murky greens. So if you like Chikurin or Rohr and Klinger Altgold Grün, this is kind of like in that same realm of colors, except that Chikurin is more of like a bright bamboo. This is mossy, swampy green. So this is Muzha Tieguanyin Tea. Now this is a very, very wet ink. So if you, it's a gorgeous, gorgeous color. Like this murky green, absolutely beautiful. I'm definitely gonna put this in one of my tea sailors. It is so gorgeous. Yeah, I can see the dark shades and the light shades. This is gonna be a great ink coming out of a drier pen because it's such a wet ink. All right. Next up is Madagascar Almond. Now this one and the next two, this one and the next ink after this is going to be more close in line with Palette Iroshizuku Chikurin because it's like a grassy green, grassy bamboo green. Lennon Tool Bar has another ink called Cabbage. It's like the same shade as these two, so I'm just like, way too many similar colors. Interesting, but very similar. Okay, Madagascar Almond. All right, so there, that it's like still in the same color family as Muzha Tieguanyin Tea, but it is brighter. I know that there's a lot of you guys that love murky and swampy greens, and these are kind of definitely just up that alley. So next up is Lennon Tool Bar Healthy. Again, this is similar ink tone as Madagascar Almond, but then even brighter. Yeah, this one is more of the grass green, apple green color. This is Healthy. And then the last similar color is Matcha. Now, I don't drink a lot of matcha tea, but when you infuse matcha with other flavors like taro or even red beans, like you get a really lovely boba tea or just tea flavor. I just like that matcha is so versatile in that way, but it is by itself a very earthy flavor. This color is also very earthy. It's beautiful. I think that matcha is my favorite of these three in terms of the brighter grassy green tones. It is almost identical to Healthy, but Healthy is slightly lighter. So this is Matcha. And you can see in the writing that Matcha is slightly darker and wetter than Healthy. So in a very wet pen, you are going to get darker shades out of Matcha than Healthy. And I talk about wet pens and dry pens because they do affect the color that you get from the inks, and how you know if your pen is wet or dry. If you want to take a look at my wet versus dry ink video, kind of describing that, you know, what kinds of pens are wet versus dry, you can check that out. I'll put it in a card above. All right, so the next ink is Firmament. Now, I should have looked up what Firmament means, but Firmament is one of the atmospheric inks, so it must be like an atmospheric event. But Firmament is a dark foresty green ink that is so interesting because in very, very wet patches of this ink, you get a blue sheen or a blue halo, one of the two. And I have never seen a blue sheen on a green ink or any ink before. It is so cool. But I think I saw that in Iroful paper. I'm not sure if it's going to show up on Tomoe River paper. But this ink will shade really, really beautifully. It's got the darker forest green. And then if you have a very, very dry pen, this ink will show off the very lovely lighter shade of this ink, which I just love so much. So I think that if you have any foresty green pens, that Firmament would be a great match with it. It is on the darker side, so on most pens this color is going to be pretty dark. But again, Firmament is a waterproof ink, so it's pigmented and you're gonna have to put more work into cleaning this ink out of your pen. The next ink is Wenshan Pouchong Tea. So this one again is part of the tea line and it's a lot darker. Now somehow the ink inside here looks like it's got some nasty buildup of mold inside, but I don't think that's mold. Either way, I'm a little hesitant to then use this ink in my pens, but it might just be a quality of the ink itself. But it is showing off really beautifully on the swatch here. I'm not sure if my camera is picking up the color that well, but it is a very, very muddy green. So it's got grays and browns underneath. So this is Wenshan Pouchong Tea. It's writing almost like a black, so I think the color is not going to show off in most nibs as the swatch does, because the swatch does show a very pale muddy green, or like the lighter tone is a pale muddy green, and then the wet part of it is a very saturated dark muddy green. And the last one on this page up here, because it's 38 inks, I have to split it into 1919, so it's not an even number. This last one is called Dongding Oolong Tea. And it is a very similar color to Wenshan Pouchong Tea. It's another muddy green with more gray. Actually, yeah, it's got a little bit more gray in it. So this is Dongding Oolong Tea. Yeah, it's a nice dark muddy green that writes a little bit like a black. So if you prefer dark black colors with a little bit of interesting notes to it, these two are great inks, the Pouchong Tea and the Oolong Tea. I really like how the left side here looks. It's just so bright and colorful with the red, yellow, orange, and greens. And now we're going to move on to the left side, which then will have more of the blue, purple, and all the black, browns, and grays. So it's going to be a lot cooler over here, like it's a storm. All right, so let's see. So first up is the bottle I have here, which is Qiancong. Not sure exactly how that is said, but I think it's Qiancong. And this is a lovely, bright teal. It's like a blue teal. I don't have a green teal, like ones that are just pop out as like a obvious green. These ones are very blue. The 4 teals I have are very blue. Well, 2 of them are teals, and I think the other 2 I would consider as like bright turquoises. So this is Qiancong. It is pretty wet, not a lot of shading from what I'm seeing here. So Qiancong. Look at that, gorgeous, gorgeous blue teal. Blue teals are probably my favorite, in terms of a blue color that I love. I have stepped away from writing with teals recently because I've been just trying out other colors. I've been loving dusty pinks and terracotta oranges. Like that line of colors I've been using a lot because it's just something I don't usually use like right away, but I am loving them a lot. But Qiancong is an ink that I 100% will pick up and love and use. So it's just so happy. If you love teals, this is the one to go. So I will have 3 more teals. You can decide which one you like more. Next is Asagi, and I got this a long time ago, so this is not one of the ones from this batch. And ink samples in general are pretty expensive because of the work that's put into, you know, putting these inks into ink bottles from the main bottle, and then, you know, also having to buy all these little vials. And so it's a lot of work, and so I can see why it costs so much per milliliter. But I also think that buying samples is a more economical way to get inks. It might not be as pretty as having these bottles, but like you'll be able to try a lot more inks, and you might not use it all up anyways. And if you do use it up, then that's when you know, oh, I do need a full bottle of that. All right, so Asagi does seem to come out very similar to Qiancong. It is a little bit more saturated than Qiancong. And I can see here that the wetness is pretty similar. I'm getting a little bit thinner lines than Qiancong, so their wetness is probably about the same. But definitely not dry. Very, very well-flowing inks. Yeah, Asagi is showing up a little bit more green, I think, than Qiancong, and it's a little bit more saturated, so, you know. But the thing is, when I tried Asagi in a pen, it did not look this bright and jewel-toned, like saturated. So I was a little disappointed with that, but the swatch here, it's really gorgeous. So I think I just put it in a dry pen. That's probably why I didn't get this gorgeous same color. All right, next up is Jimmy. So I got a sample from my friend in Chicago when she bought a full bottle of this at Atlas Stationers. This one I would say is more along the lines of a turquoise, because it's shown up more like a pale blue. So in the ink industry, if it's more blue, it's a turquoise. I've noticed that a lot of like turquoise named inks are just very blue, and then the teal inks are super dark. So I don't know, the dilemma between turquoise and teals is still something for me to deal with. Okay, so this is Jimmy. I noticed that Jimmy's very watery, which means it's wet, but it's probably also going to be very high shading ink. You can see there it is a lot more blue, but it retains some green, so I would say this is like a true turquoise. True turquoises in nature are very green, but also very blue. And I think this is it. These ones are like darker turquoises. All right. So the next one here is the Fortune Teller ink. This is called Home. So this is kind of like a bright turquoise sky blue color. But when I let it dry down, it looked so similar to Jimmy. But when it's wet, it's very different. This one is more, this is more of like the real turquoises of the ink industry, because I don't see a lot of green in here at all, actually. On Tomoe River paper, this is Home. So yeah, actually these 4 are very different teals and turquoises. Really lovely. If you like more blue, go for Home. If you like more green, go for Asagi or Qiancong. And then Jimmy is like the true turquoise. It's super gorgeous. But as you can see here, the letters are already very pale, so this one, Jimmy, does dry down to be a very pale color. And again, your mileage may vary based on the nib that you have. All right, next up is Successful. This is a gorgeous, now I think this is like closest to a base blue. So you'll see here, it's very blue. Yeah. This makes me think of like Asagao from Iroshizuku ink. And this is Successful. I almost think of this like a powdery blue or a dusty blue, because it's not a jewel tone color. There's a lot more dustiness to it, a bit more gray undertone to it. But it is very wet, and you can see here it's feathering a little bit. So I think Successful is super wet and might not be the best behaving on paper as well, especially Tomoe River paper. We'll see in a little bit how it compares with the other two papers. Next up is Blue Sky. Blue Sky is basically what it, the name. The name describes it pretty well. It is the color of sky blue. And again, it is pale, unsaturated, but very legible and very wet. Blue Sky. Wow. Like, I don't like blue in general, but when you have blues that are in like just outside the range of a base blue, it is very gorgeous. So this, I like Blue Sky. It is your unsaturated, dusty kind of sky blue color. It is not that bright, vibrant sky blue, but it is saturated enough and lovely. Next up is Jing Ao. This is one of their traveling around the world ink. I forgot what Jing Ao means, but I'll put it up on the screen there if I remember to. Jing Ao is another lovely dusty blue ink. A different shade of blue though. Yeah. So in comparison, Blue Sky I think has a little bit more blue and a slight hint of green in it, and Jing Ao has, I think, just more gray and less blue. And there you go. Jing Ao is super, super wet. But it behaves. Oh, it's starting to feather a little bit. I think it's just because I have so much coming out of this Kakimoyo nib. But yeah, I would say that Jing Ao is pretty similar to Pilot Iroshizuku's Tsukiyo. And I have another ink in here that's pretty similar to Tsukiyo as well. So Hehuan Blue is the next blue. These blues are really gorgeous, but they're all so very, very similar to each other. Okay, so Hehuan Blue here looks like it's got more green than Jing Ao. Oh, I'm not sure if I didn't get a good hold of ink on the nib here, but it definitely is not as wet as Jing Ao. And I would say that it is actually, I think Hehuan Blue is actually the tone between Jing Ao and Blue Sky. So a little bit of green in here, less black or gray as Jing Ao. All right, next up is Hobe. I think Hobe is the true Tsukiyo. This one is a very dark blue-black. Or actually, I don't think it's a blue-black. I love this color, so it's probably not blue-black. Okay, yeah, it's very similar to Hehuan Blue. A little bit darker, so this is Hobe. Very well flowing, good saturated ink. Yeah, Hobe is like Tsukiyo. Sometimes Tsukiyo comes off a little green, other times it's just a really nice deep blue. So I would say Hobe is your Tsukiyo if you like Tsukiyo. All right. Next column, I'm going to start with Night Sky. Now, Night Sky is an atmospheric. No, it's not atmospheric. I don't remember if it is atmospheric or not, but I forgot to say at the beginning, I do have a spreadsheet of all these colors describing what color they are. It's got extra link to websites that you can use to find out more information, as well as I'll try to put some inks that I think are similar to these, at least from the ones I have and that I know of. So you can utilize that spreadsheet as a reference for these inks, and I'll add on to them as I get more Lennon Tool Bar inks. But I will also show on that spreadsheet if it's a waterproof ink or not. All right, so this is Night Sky. I think, let me see. Oh yeah, Night Sky is gorgeous. It's almost like Hobe too, really. This is, but it's got less green than Hobe. Night Sky, oh my god, this is really wet. Yeah, super, super wet ink. Night Sky. As all these inks are drying, I'm not noticing any sheening really. So if you like sheen, Lennon Tool Bar does not have a lot of sheen. They do have some shading, and I think Lennon Tool Bar only has one line of shimmer inks. They don't have a lot of shimmer inks. All right, this next one is called Hydrangea. Now hydrangeas are 3 different colors: blue, purple, and pink. You know, in nature, the flowers are those 3 colors, and in the ink world, well, you're gonna get one of those 3. This one happens to be a periwinkle blue. It's leaning more blue, but it's got some purple in it. So this is Hydrangea, and it's a very wet ink. So if you know Kobe Hime Ajisai or Kobe Hydrangea, that purpley pink ink, that one is a very dry ink, and it leans purpley pink. This one is a periwinkle blue, and it is super, super wet. This one reminds me of Ajisai from Pilot Iroshizuku ink, because Ajisai also means hydrangea, but it is the bluer hydrangea color, and I prefer the pinky purple hydrangea color, but I have not found a pinky purple hydrangea ink that is on the wet side. The blue ones tend to be wetter than the purple. Okay, and the next one is called Flow. This is a very, very saturated, dark, like deep royal purple. If you use it, I think coming out of most nibs, this is going to be like a black ink. It's one of those purples that just shows up as a black. Yeah, not too much shading with this one unless you have a very dry pen, because it's a very wet ink. But even, I guess, with a very wet pens will also help create shading depending on how you write with your nib. I think Drew from Goulet Pens made a video about how you can create shading with your nibs, like how you write, like if you do print lettering, the way that you remove the nib from the paper, allowing the ink to pool, causes the shading to happen. So I think you can create shading with almost any nib size, but it's the technique of writing that will help create the shading the most. All right, and for me, I write really fast. I write in cursive most of the time, and when I write in regular print, I write really fast. And from that video, I saw that you have to write really slowly for the ink to pool in its natural way to cause shading. But I write really fast, that's why I don't see shading. Now I know. If you want shading, you're gonna have to write slower. All right, the next one is Cloudy Day. Now, Cloudy Day is another atmospheric waterproof ink. This one, it's saying that it's blue, but to me, it's more of a gray ink with green undertone and some blue. This is a very interesting ink, and it is indeed wet as well. So if you look at that, comparing it with other blues and greens, like I'm seeing green, my lighting is probably not going to show this ink color right now so well, but it is a very dark color. It's got green undertone to it. Cloudy day. Where's the cloudy sky? Yeah, cloudy day. All right. Yeah, it doesn't have too much shading. Well, it can have some shading. It seems to be drying down and showing the shading. But in my writing there, I don't see any shading. All right, next one is called Mountain Elves. This is a gray. I believe it leans a bit on the blue side, a bluish purple gray. Yeah, it's like a blue gray. It's a Mountain Elves. That's a lovely gray, actually. Yeah. Next up is Silkie. This is, I think, is the most basic gray. Or maybe it's like a purpley gray. One of them is a, oh, this is not the basic gray. Let me see. It's got a hint of purple, just a small hint of purple. Silkie. But in the writing, I just see gray. So yeah, I got a lot of gray inks. I don't know why. I thought that they would lean a little bit more into another color. But Mountain Elves leans blue, Cloudy Gray leaned green when wet, but now I'm kind of just seeing, I am seeing the blue gray undertone now of Cloudy Day. It doesn't stay green when it dries. Next up is Catfish Spirit. Now this one has more purple, so this is definitely a purple gray. I think this is a lovely gray ink, but it's considered a purple by Yoseka. But it probably is. It's just a very, very muted purple. So Catfish Spirit. If you like colors like Hara Hara, this is in the same color family as Hara Hara, but it's just very, very darker, grayer version of that. All right, next up is Twilight. Twilight, I think Twilight is an atmospheric phenomenon, so it's a waterproof ink. This one is a blue, blue-gray. It's very dark. Twilight. Oh my god, it is so wet. Yeah, it just picked up so much on this nib. Well, it makes sense because this is a waterproof ink. It is very wet and pigmented. All right, second to last ink here is called Pen Fairy. Now, Pen Fairy, I think this is just the true gray. I don't see any other undertones to this gray. If there's any undertone to this, it would be like red. This is Pen Fairy. Again, a very wet ink. Yeah, if you want a straight up gray, Pen Fairy is the one to go. All right, last but not least is Mesona Tea. Now, I don't know why I put the T on the very last ink because this is a brown. It would have been better on this side over here, but then that would cut a green onto this side. So we have the brown here. This is a very dark brown. So Mesona Tea. Yep. It it'll be very, very dark, very dark brown. All right. So there you have it, all of the inks swatched out for you. So now that we have this side fully dry, let's compare. So again, I have them all swatched here. In my Rhodia paper is this white one, and then the creamy yellow one, it's still pretty, it's like an off-white. And this one is Irofil paper. I noticed that Irofil paper is a lot more absorbent than Rhodia and Tomoe River, so you'll get broader lines out of Irofil paper from what I saw, and much thinner lines out of Rhodia paper. So if we want to compare, so I don't think there's a lot of varying differences in the color, but you can see in Irofil paper that it's easier to shade, to see the shading, especially in the swatch, because it seems to pool in a better way to show off shading. I'm seeing here like Good Spirits down here also is showing off the shading pretty well. To me, I feel like Sherry is a lot more orange in Tomoe River paper and redder on Rhodia paper. Red Bean seems to be pretty similar across the board, with it being a little bit more red on Tomoe River paper. Joey is the same throughout. Sunmoon Ruby Lake is also the same. Wolfberry is pretty similar. Yeah, everything is pretty similar across the board. All right, and then let's look at the greens and yellows. So let's see. I'm definitely seeing that Sesame Oil is a lot cooler in Rhodia paper, and it's a lot more warm on the Irofil paper. So Sesame Oil is the same on Tomoe River and Rhodia paper. The rest are pretty similar. Oh, except for Firmament. So as I mentioned, you can see here on Tomoe River paper that, let me just zoom in a bit. So here on Tomoe River paper, it is just this lovely muted forest green. The same with Rhodia paper, it's the same like muted forest green right there. But on Irofil paper, you get this blue sheen. Like, wow. Why and how? That is amazing. So I don't see that same shading here on Tomoe River paper, or the same sheen. So that is a very interesting color on Irofil paper. Okay, let's move over to the blues. All right, so I think it's mostly dry, but I'm just going to do this. Okay, so they're all pretty similar. Yeah, there's no variance in how the colors show up on the paper. Successful, Blue Sky, Jing Ao, Hehuan Blue, and Hobe. I think Hobe just shows up, has a little bit more green on Irofil paper. And then when we look at grays, and let's see. So I'm seeing there's no sheening going on in Rhodia paper, but I do see sheen on Night Sky for both Tomoe River paper and Irofil paper. There's a little bit of sheening on Hydrangea as well on Irofil, but not as much on the Tomoe River paper. And then Flow, that one has a really strong sheen. So you can see the sheen there on the Flow. I'm not sure. Yeah, there it is. So flow has sheen on all 3 papers. Yeah, but not as, it's just not as prevalent on Rhodia, but it does have sheen. And then Cloudy Day, it also has a little bit of a sheen. I'm not sure if it is sheen, but it's like shiny. It's not a prevalent color that usually sheening happens. So in terms of sheen, I would say that the very, very wet, darker colors like Flow, Night Sky, and Cloudy Day, these 3 seem to have sheen. Firmament had sheen on Beautiful paper. But other than that, I didn't see a lot of sheening from any other color on all 3 paper. Yeah. Blues tend to have red sheening. I don't see red sheening coming off of these 3 blues. It's more of like a black halo, if anything. And then for the rest of these colors, I think that they're pretty much the same on all 3 papers. Yeah. Yep, so thank you so much for sticking with me all the way to the end here. Let me know down in the comments which one of these colors you like the most, or which one that you might want to try out. And also, what would you get a full bottle of? Obviously, I have a full bottle of Qiancong. I have a full bottle of red beans. I think the one I want a full bottle of is On Tiger. That one is so good. I also love Good Spirits, but I need to try that out first to see if I really like it coming out of pens. What else do I like? I love Joey, but it's too similar to Red Beans. I know I said that it's a little bit more rosy, and it might definitely look different from pens, but in the swatch they look very similar. I do like the way Cloudy Day looked when it's wet, but I don't like it when it's dry. It doesn't look as nice. I might also get a full bottle of Firmament, but that's a pigmented ink, and I don't have any pigmented inks, but I'm sure it's not that hard to clean out. I also like Muzha Tieguanyin Tea. This is gorgeous. I think I'll get a full bottle of that. If you like Pilot Iroshizuku Inaho or the New Sailor Moroccan Tea ink, they're more yellow than this, but I think it's still in the same muddy, murky green color, and I really like that. Yeah, I think I'm happy with the sample of Jimmy I have, and I also love Qiancong. Asagi is darker, but I don't really think I need this. These 2 are too similar. Okay. Hopefully this was helpful for you guys. I know that I don't have all the Lennon Tool Bar inks, but when I do get the rest of them, I will do another update with those specific colors that I don't have here yet, and add to my spreadsheet so that you guys can have a feel for what kind of color these inks are, and you can buy them knowing that it is a color that you would enjoy. Or you can buy samples like I did and just try them out. But because now you know what the colors look like on my swatches, you can have hopefully a better idea of which inks to try out. I noticed that Yoseka's swatch pictures tend to be very, very bright, and so the color isn't exactly like their swatch pictures. So hopefully my lighting here, it's just natural light. You can see how it looks through natural light. All right, so just another close-up before I end the video. And that's super, super cute. Stamp up there. Okay, you guys, thank you again so much. I know I said thank you like 3-4 times, but thank you. I appreciate you guys for watching my video. I hope this video has been helpful for you, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.